This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Respectonomics is bringing you Living Economics. Living Economics is now in the middle of July of 2026, and we're going to be taking a look at the current economic status and some ideas that go along with that. Your voice that you're hearing is the voice of Respectonomics, Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, also your year of Respectonomics, emphasizing that we like your feedback, we like your comments, we like your ideas, we like your critiques, we like your applause. But whatever it is you want to get back to us, please, so that we can redirect as required and emphasize these economic outlays. These ones are part of also, we have the living journey and we also have the living dignity. Living journey discusses and reviews the paths that we can take individually to our places of prosperity. Prosperity being broadly defined beyond the economic, economic limits. And then we have living dignity, which is really just looking at the aspects of respect and decency and self-approval and things like that. This one, economics. Now, economics, as you may know, is based on a Greek word of oikos and nemos. That's where we get economy from. The oikos means the household, nemein means to manage. Managing the household is something that we all do, whether we are in partnership, whether we are living alone, living communally, whatever it is we're doing. We are all, to one degree or another, household managers. Now, why that's so important is this. If we are household managers, then we are definitively economists. We know what economics means to us. And I want to emphasize throughout this discussion that the purpose of economics in oneself is often commonsensical, it is self-navigated, it is self-determined. We think in terms of what we can afford or can't afford. Sometimes we mess up and get too much debt and can't pay it back. We can all make mistakes and so on. But what I really want to emphasize now is that you have a clear idea of what the economy really means. You know what it is to run the household, to be able to go out to the theater, to be able to go to work and so on. The combinations thereof are yours. The point is, this sort of rather flabby description of the economy is to reconcile ourselves to one other thing, that economic leaders today, and economic means financial leaders, economic leaders in the pure sense, the politicians, the governors, and so on. The one thing you will notice is actually how little they know about economics. You hear the head of the Federal Reserve, the central bank in the United States, saying, yes, we were surprised. He should not be surprised. He should have all of that kind of information right at his fingertips. So we see inflation going up and down like a yo-yo. We see interest rates sort of with very wise pronouncements that they're going to be doing this, that, or the other, and they do the complete opposite. And therefore, we need to look at this world of economics with a degree of cynicism, but a degree of reality, which is your reality. I want to take you to something here. Do you remember at school time, I think it was at school anyway, the teacher would write up or put on a piece of paper 3 or 4 words, and then which were nouns, like cat and mat and table and things like that. And then on the other column would write down adjectives, big, small, white, green, whatever, but adjectives. And the idea was that you and I were being asked to tag the right adjective with the right noun. So if you had, let's say, sleeping and cat, you would say sleeping cat. That would be the adjective and the noun that comes together. Where does this take us? Well, we've got three economic words, or words that are very prominent today in the world of economic appraisals and analysis, and they are oil, AI, artificial intelligence, oil, AI, and layoffs. And those are three words. You could come out with many more. But against those adjectives, the nouns, we have then come out with some adjectives that go with one or more of those three. And the ones we've come up with are indelible, intractable, invasive, insoluble, inevitable, and infectious. And your job and my job is to say, now, which ones of those apply to which ones of the nouns? And the answer is, actually, they all apply to each of those categories, each of those nouns. Try them again. Oil is indelible, it's intractable, it's invasive, it's insoluble, it's inevitable, and it's infectious. Layoffs, the same thing. We can go round in circles on this, but what we need to understand is the lack of solubility in these issues that are confronting us, the oil, the artificial intelligence, and the layoffs. There's one word that comes out of all of this, probably as much as any, that most of us experience a combination of anxiety and fear, that we really don't understand what the oil markets are going to do. We've heard every pronouncement. It'll go down to $50, it'll go up to $200 a barrel. The truth of the matter is that when we look at the economic world today, it is unreliable. It is, you might even call it impervious. It doesn't have any obvious solutions. It is very hard to define. With that in mind, we need then to look at what steps are being taken by the proverbial political, economic, financial leaders. And I think one of the ways to look at the financial leadership today is to consider them to be these individuals to be economic surgeons. And we believe at Respectonomics, that a lot of these surgeons are operating in the dark without the use of x-rays. And to make matters worse, instead of using a scalpel, they're using a sledgehammer. Now, this may sound a sort of almost like a trite sort of slam the economist. It's nothing to do with that. It's the reality of steps that are taken, often taken based on yesterday's news, or indeed on things that happened 10 years ago, and we said, well, that was the solution then. So we're trying to take yesterday's problems and the solutions that worked then and apply those solutions to today's problems. It doesn't actually tally. It doesn't work. Let me give you another example. You're in a traffic jam and it's a hot summer's afternoon and there's cars all around you and there's all kinds of rackets going on, people honking and so on and getting angry and so on, and nothing seems to be moving. And you're in the middle of this traffic jam, and as you turn on your radio to find out the latest news, you hear it being said that they are raising the price of gasoline taxes. And the idea behind raising the gasoline taxes is so that people won't drive as much. And you can hear that rather smug solution, and that will solve the problem of congestion. Actually, the reason there are too many cars on the road today, amongst other things, is the difficulty of building new roads. But more than that, it's the difficulty of alternative transport. So when you say we're raising the price of gas in order, or the taxes on gas, in order to try and keep people off the roads, we're already in the traffic jam. We're sitting there fuming and swearing and all those kinds of things, and the family getting upset with one another. And the traffic isn't going anywhere. And then you get this rather suave, svelte voice saying, and we think it's important to raise the price of gasoline, the taxes on it, the carbon taxes, whatever you want to call them. And the answer is that that kind of step is missing the point. In not only missing the point, it's also missing the actual timing and the reality. There is congestion. There is congestion in the economic world today. There's stuff that doesn't get to the market. How often do you go to the store and you find out it's not in today? because somewhere along the line there was a supply issue, a congestion issue, and it didn't get to the market. So suddenly raising prices of carbon taxes, for example, isn't the solution. Now, this may sound as though we're just trying to throw the barbs and slings and arrows around. I suppose there's a certain amount of humor in doing that, or even it makes you feel good. But the truth of the matter is two things that we believe are important. The first one is each of us is an economist. And secondly, each of us is an economist and a household manager, not only of the household in the traditional sense of the house, the car, the garden, and so on. We are also household managers of ourselves. Look at ourselves as a household, if you will, because one of the problems we're dealing with is in all spheres of economic activity, we ask the question, what are the next steps? What are we to do? And I think that if we gave each other white sheets of paper or screens, let's be technological, but gave each other white sheets of paper and said, write down what you think the solutions are, I think most of us would end up with almost graffiti on the table, on the sheet of paper. You wouldn't really know which way to go. So I'm going to look at the household management a little closer to home and look at us as our own household, one's own corporate business frame, the one that you actually live in. That is the first household that you're aware of. You know you live in a house or you live in an apartment, you live somewhere, but you also live in your own being. And we're going to look at your own being as being your first response to these economic questions. The first one is this, and that is whatever activity we engage in. Let's say we just bought a really, really splashy car. I'm just going to give you an example. You bought a Maserati or you bought a Ferrari. Now, you may say, well, I'm not interested in that. So find something else that's really splashy. You bought a yacht. You bought a resort. You bought something amazing. And here's the deal. That's the activity that took place. And here's a fascinating insight into those kinds of activities. You write down, what did I do? I bought something or other. I went to a party. I went to this. I went to that. Whatever it is you did, you identify the activity. Whatever it is, identify it. And then what you do is, what did I feel about that activity? And here's an extraordinary truth. Some of the things that we do that we think are immensely pleasurable and exciting and rewarding actually give us very little value. And in fact, they even create in us a certain amount of guilt. The classic example, you're at work, you've had a fantastic week, and at the end of the week, you say to your buddies, let's all go out for a drink. And you go out for more than one drink, and you have a lot of drinks, but because you're celebrating this fabulous week you've had. On the surface, it was a lot of fun. It was great. Now let's do the analysis. What did you do? I went out with all my friends. What did you feel about what you did? And you come back with this, well, I feel a bit guilty. I feel I should have actually stayed at my desk. I feel I should have gone home early. I feel I should have taken the car in to be serviced, whatever it is. But you see, the whole point of this is that activities that we engage in that seem to be pleasurable, let's say on the surface, are the ones that do not in fact give us pleasure. They in fact can construct guilt. And the ones that you think you're not going to enjoy, they give us great strength and great pride. For example, no, I'm not going to go out with my buddies on a Friday afternoon. I'm going to stay at my desk and I'm going to work. So I work away and I call a few people, do some follow-up calls, write a couple of emails and so on. So I'm busy doing productive work. And yet my buddies are all out drinking. I then write down, what did I do? Well, I stayed at my desk and worked. What did you feel about what you did? Well, actually, I felt very satisfied. I really enjoyed it. I got a lot of work done. I've got myself set up for next week, and I got home early and a few other things. The point of the matter is the things that make you think you won't enjoy them are the things that often give us pleasure. So, in economic activity, one of the things is to identify is the activity and then to assess the pleasure that comes from it, whether it's a transient pleasure, a instant pleasure, a spontaneous pleasure, or a lasting pleasure. That's for you to decide. You are your own household. But the first thing we do is look at activity and reward or activity and pleasure and find out how the two come together. Now, the next thing is this. You and I are very busy people and we do things that are good. But when we do things that are good, Respectonomics is a good example. We work very hard on bringing this message to people, and quite often we do not hear enough back from people. Therefore, it's almost like you've done what you thought was right and so on, but there's really no reward in it. There's no sense of achievement. And one of the things that's very important is to measure your success, not what the culture tells you, or the corporation tells you, or the community tells you. No, your measure of success. So, for example, you want to start measuring your success. One of the easiest ways to do it is to get a bunch of tokens. You can get some corn if you want before you turn it into popcorn. You can get some beads. You can get some tokens of any kind you really want. And you put them on one side of your desk or in a drawer or wherever you want to put them. And then when you've done something that you know is constructive and leading to you to where you want to be, you take one of those tokens, coupons, whatever you'd call it, take one of those coupons, tokens, and you move it to the other side of your desk or the other drawer. And at the end of the day, you look and you find out that you actually filled an entire drawer because of you participating in these constructive activities. That is where you get rewarded. Maybe those activities didn't give you the cultural response that you would have liked. That's unfortunate, of course. But in the meantime, you get this great sense of self-satisfaction when you measure and record physically the activities in which you've engaged, which in fact were constructive. It's really, really worth it to give yourself those. They're not really rewards, they're tokens, they're acknowledgements that you did what you said you were going to do. The last one is an expression that we all like to hear. It's called capacity building. Capacity building, it's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it? And we build capacity. And the economy is always about building capacity. Well, we can build our own capacity. And we can do it at three different levels to build capacity. Now, before I do that, let's just go back a moment. We talked about the pleasures and the activity and the reconciling the two. We talked about how we measure and record spontaneously the activities that we engage in that are constructive and useful. Now we're talking about capacity building. So we've done the two things that we know which give us pleasure. We know how to look at ourselves and measure our successes. Now we're going to see how do we build our own capacity. And you build capacity at three different levels. And the reason for the three levels isn't because we're losing focus. It's actually the opposite. It's focusing on the household. It's focusing on the human body, yours, mine. We're focusing on the three components, the triunal nature of a human being, that you have a body and you want to build up the capacity of the body. And you do that by aerobic exercise, you do it by getting decent rest, you do it by drinking water, you do it by cutting out some things that are, let's just say, harmful. But everybody knows how to, if you've got a house, you know things that need to be refurbished and things that need to be maintained or repainted or something or other. Do the same to the body. The body needs to be walked. The body needs to be washed. The body needs to be cleaned up. There's all kinds of things you can do to your body that give it new energy and a new sense of relevance, a new vitality. And then is your mind. The same thing applies. What is it that excites the mind? It could be writing poetry. It could be studying your products. But do something that excites the mind. It may be getting together with some friends and saying, just want to talk about life generally. What do you think about climate change? What do you think about the separation between the rich and the poor? But start looking at, we talk about exercising the body. We're all kind of aware of the need to do that. What about exercising the mind? And then we have, if you have exercised the mind, you might even want to go and take some courses. Take them in the history of art. Take them in, the philosophy of ancient philosophy. But what you'll find is, and it's fascinating, when you excite the mind gets excited in many different directions. It's almost like here's a word, it's peripatetic. It strikes in all areas. So we've got the body and the mind. But what if we then take the inner part of oneself, that soul that exists within each and every one of us, and start exciting the soul? What happens if we start refilling it with faith and hope and the sense that there's something valuable? And all you want to do with your soul basically is to find out what is the food that feeds it. You don't hesitate to think about what food feeds your body. You don't hesitate to think about what food feeds the mind. Then how about accelerating what we think, you think, I think, feeds the soul? It's personal, it's individual. But when you do that, one of the most exciting things is of feeding the soul is it's an ability to then liberate you into new things that you can do. And we started this part of the conversation by saying we want to build capacity. Well, that's what we are doing, building capacity in your own household, household being defined as your own being. And we're talking here about the body, the mind, and the soul, and giving them all a fair shake together. So I'm going to ask you a question as I leave off. Have you given your household a decent chance? Have you taken off the covers? Have you looked at it and said, hey, there's some real strengths here, some really, really wonderful things here. Let's bring them out into the open. They belong to me, and I am going to make them shine. Have you shined your body and your mind and your soul? That's the question. Thank you so much for listening. Jeremy at respectonomics.com. Let me have your thoughts, please. Let me have your sense of economics, your sense of politics, your sense of leadership, your sense of your own household. Let's do this together. That's called community. Thank you for listening.